We expect to be safe within our homes, but that's not always the case. Sometimes our only line of defense is to not engage at all, or at least to be over-prepared and a little extra cautious. These people learned firsthand that their attempts at safety weren't always enough, and a few of them show why it pays to be over-prepared. Today we have some disturbing, terrifying, downright awful clips of people being followed, chased, and sometimes attacked within their homes. Luckily, most of these people had cameras set up, and in some cases, those cameras made all the difference. You're going to want to watch to the end to see what I mean by that. You won't want to miss it. Cornered outside the elevator. If you're on your way home, the last thing you want is a gun put in your face. These men clearly coming home from the gym had no clue what was waiting for them on the other side of the door. Two robbers, as we see, come running out of their car and burst through the door to greet their unsuspecting victims. The two men on the inside instantly comply, quickly dropping their belongings. It's best if possible to go along and keep things from escalating further. These men make it out safely, maybe with a bit less to their name, but all things considered, this could have gone significantly worse for them had things amped up. Ring camera catches would-be intruder. When it's dark outside, it's hard to be aware of your surroundings. This woman and her son were coming home later from what would have been an average day out. Nothing seemed to be amiss, and they weren't obviously followed. At least, not at first. The woman manages to lock the door and the knob is jiggled not moments later.
Who's that?
Luckily for this woman, she had a Ring camera and could see a strange man trying to enter her home behind her. This was a man she'd never seen before and didn't know, but he was trying to force entry and get in with her and her son.
Who is that? Get out of here!
Luckily, she'd locked the door so he wasn't able to, but if she'd been just a little slower or more forgetful, this definitely wouldn't have been a very safe situation.
Always be aware of your surrounding. Don't just jump out of your car. Don't just assume that everything is safe and cleared. You look around, see who's around.
Sacramento Ring camera lurker. There were plenty of reasons to get a Ring camera. This man proves just that. If you're heading home, the last thing you want to deal with is someone who's decided to invade your space. In Sacramento, a man seemed to be targeting women he perceived as being alone, refusing to leave them alone and loitering outside to try and get them.
He walked up to my door after parking his car in my driveway, and he says, "Hola."
This seems to be a targeted string of attacks by one individual, as he harasses and traumatizes an entire area, leaving women too afraid to even leave their houses.
I'm getting so nervous. I'm afraid to go out front in my own yard with my daughter. When a car drives by, I'm like, oh my gosh, is this him?
He doesn't seem outwardly threatening other than his presence. He doesn't appear to be asking for anyone in particular, just girls in one case.
Rosa says he asked for the girl in the house.
"I can't help you. I closed and locked the door."
There have been no police reports filed, but the man in the gold Altima is being treated as dangerous. Those in the area are told not to speak or to engage with him, to simply stay away and not see exactly what he wants. Followed up 6 stories. Not everyone in one of these situations gets out safely or can avoid danger. This woman was stalked up 6 sets of stairs by a man who followed her into her building and forced his way into the apartment when they went there. When the police arrived, the man supposedly used a woman's voice to avoid detection, masking the victim's screams for help. This woman didn't make it out of the altercation the way you might hope, but they did eventually catch the man. He was a nearby houseless individual who became dangerous after some time. Whether she saw the man follow her or realized it too late, it was still a sad situation. It's probably best to stay aware of your surroundings. Just shoot a look over your shoulder before you unlock a building or find a way to shake off someone who may or may not be trying to follow you. Disrespected man goes nuclear. You never really know the effect you're going to have on other people when you leave a public place. This man followed a woman home because when the two were at a grocery store, separately, she reportedly bumped into him. The perceived slight was reacted to in an extreme way. He followed her home, as stated, and shot the woman in response. The shot only grazed her in the leg, but her brother was also struck, leading to hospitalization. The man managed to get away and flee the scene after his bizarre fit of rage went very, very wrong.
Why would someone, do you think, get so mad over something so small?
I have no idea. People just time bombs, for little stuff, dumb stuff.
The truth is, you never know what the tipping point will be with any one person. This man might not have been right, or he might have just needed one more thing to push him over the edge. Of course, in this case, far, far over the edge. Woman assaulted by stalker. You never know the kind of people lurking around in the middle of the night. They can be all manner of dangerous, or just another person. It's best to keep your doors locked and stay safe, but how do you know when you're going to be followed? CCTV catches as this man managed to not only pinpoint a home that was unlocked, but snuck through the night to do so. The woman reported that the man worked his way into her house only to inappropriately grab her. He was easily spooked, luckily, and her screams scared him off before he could do anything else. The Nassau County woman spared no time in reporting the incident. Still, he managed to get away without repercussions anyway. Pickaxe-wielding psycho. This video starts with what seems to be your average suburban morning. No issues to be found. Until from the back of the screen, you see a woman come into view and throw all of her force into jamming a pickaxe into the front door of this unsuspecting house. You don't get a good look at her from this angle, but she goes for a second hit. The pickaxe has enough power to shatter the window's glass, and from inside the house, a loud scream can be heard. That's enough, it seems, for the attacker, as the woman in the skirt turns tail and simply walks off. That's not all, though, as the 65-year-old woman comes back, smashing more of the windows and terrifying the home's inhabitants, which was a grandmother who was babysitting a 6-week-old newborn.
My mother-in-law, first instinct was to grab the baby. 2 seconds later, all you see is huge shards of glass in the bassinet where she would be.
This continues for a few minutes more before the attacker leaves, and if you hadn't witnessed the attack on the home, you likely would have missed it entirely. Once the woman is gone, so are all signs from the road that she'd ever been there. Candy sales ambush. Sometimes it is better to just not answer your door. You want to be polite and friendly, but solicitors are not the worst thing you could handle. This person unfortunately learned that firsthand. A man with a candy box showed up in front of a house, posing as a salesperson. When the person in question opened the door, they were immediately ambushed by 3 men who came running in. These suspects were armed and dangerous and took the homeowner by surprise. The series of ambushes were caught by ring camera footage as homes quickly found that the same men were showing up across all of the houses. The last bit of footage saw the same situation as before, but this time no one answered. The man said he felt uncomfortable with the way the man seemed to be hiding from the camera, and after some time he decided to leave. There's no question that if he'd chosen to open the door or been home to do so, he would have been attacked in the same way. It might seem like an overreaction, but it's clearly a better idea not to respond. Burglars armed, but not ready. You might not love the idea of surveillance out in front of your home, but as these homeowners found, sometimes just having your eyes peeled might be enough to keep you out of harm's way. 2 men with their faces obscured walked up to the front door of this Covina home, knocking incessantly as the homeowners chose not to respond. He begins to grow more and more impatient as he's ignored by them, but there's nothing they can really do. In the camera you can see where these would-be burglars are holding onto weapons, only partially obscured by their pockets or hands. Eventually, the man in the back, serving as a lookout, decides to call the whole thing off, and the homeowner's decision to not answer the door may in fact have saved their lives. Attacker in for a nasty surprise. Most of the time, these burglaries happen in the middle of the night. This man pulls up to the front of a home on the side of a major road and doesn't get a response immediately. The man knocking begins trying to force himself into the house, using all the force he can to get himself into the home. He throws his weight, uses his feet, and eventually does barge in.
But investigators say he messed with the wrong mom.
Yes, he did. Yeah. I will do anything to protect my family.
The woman inside, a mother with 2 young children, was scared but seemingly prepared. She pulled out her firearm and reportedly was ready to do anything to keep her family safe. The shotgun in her hand is proof of that, as she points it in his direction. As soon as he makes his way into the house, he quickly realizes his mistake and goes running out from where he came from.
He was running for his life, and he kept looking back and making sure that I wasn't going to just shoot him in the back.
What stopped you from killing this guy?
My kids.
The woman didn't want to be identified, but claimed to not have lived there long, and the man was likely looking for someone else or even the previous person living there. The man got away with very little footage of him or the attack to identify him with. Footballer attempted forced entry. This man seemed all too ready to force his way into the home. If you don't know, this is footage of the former Seattle Seahawks player Richard Sherman. He quickly tries to force the door open, and when it doesn't immediately come through, he begins screaming for them to come through, presumably to get him out. For a little more context, this was his father-in-law's house, and Sherman himself was drunk and belligerent. He was arrested for his behavior, but things didn't go down quickly. They needed to use force and a canine to get him under control. Though once in custody and facing domestic abuse charges, he calmed down considerably. This episode seems to have been sparked on his mental health journey, as his wife told police he'd been on antidepressants and was receiving mental health counseling at the time. This is a whole minute or so of the ex-footballer trying to force his way into the home, the family inside likely terrified for their well-being at the time. How would you have responded? Would that be enough to bait you? Before the last clip, since you watched up until this point, why don't you consider subscribing to the channel? We upload 2 new creepy, disturbing, and downright scary videos every week, so stay up to date with our latest releases by getting those post notifications. If you enjoyed this one, we have plenty more for you on the channel, so you don't want to miss a single one. Dramatic home invasion sparked safety concerns. This violent robbery was broadcast across the country, striking fear into the upper middle-class neighborhood.
The harder we make it, the less of a target we are.
The robbery went on as many do. Multiple men come up to a door with weapons, forcing entry into someone's home. However, the young woman in front of the door was an accomplice. As she approached the house looking for help, seemingly, she gets the door open just enough that it would be difficult to react in time. She quickly signals to the attackers hidden behind her in the dark, and they ambush the home together. This sparked safety concerns as nearby families began worrying about their own safety, whether they wanted to arm and protect themselves from within the house or if such a weapon would be helpful for them.
If somebody's going to come in and do me harm, I wouldn't want something less lethal. I'm going to want something that's actually going to stop them in their tracks.
Little information was known about this attack, as most people are obscured or difficult to make out in the darkness. But once night falls, maybe don't open your door.